Council on Foreign Relations was formed in 1921. Some believe this is the most powerful private institution in the United States, if not the world. To become a lifetime member of the Council, you must be a U.S. citizen or resident, nominated in writing by another full member, and sponsored by 3 more. Despite these high standards, many people manage to join the CFR as lifetime members. I was surprised by how many of these individuals are celebrities, public faces in the news, movies, and business world. But you'll have to do a bit of research to find the members list, and odds are you'll never know what they talk about. A notorious secrecy clause prevents these world leaders from discussing their meetings. This secrecy is disturbing because the membership roster is so comprehensive. It reads like a who's who of the American elite. Consider that John McCain, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama are all members of the CFR. The CFR includes heads of state, captains of industry, the mainstream media, and even Angelina Jolie.
If you've ever suspected that there's a shadow government lurking behind the scenes trying to, control events, disregarding and contradicting the will of others, then I think you owe it to yourself to watch this video, because I think that I've done a fairly good job condensing the facts and giving a pretty good overview of what seems to be exactly that, a shadow government hiding in plain sight. It's called the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. It's an NGO, a non-governmental organization that has thousands of important people belonging to it, going to its meetings, closed-door meetings, signing non-disclosure agreements so they can't talk about it. But anyway, I've done a little flow chart here to kind of show you how the whole thing works. So here's the CFR, all hush-hush and secret. And then you have people from the corporate world, the news media, the entertainment media, the bankers, and the CIA. And they belong to it. Scads of people belong to it, from Henry Kissinger to Angelina Jolie. And, they all come to this thing, and they go to these secret meetings that no one knows about. And they put their members in power in the White House. Joe Biden's one right now. In Congress, you've got guys like Adam Schiff or Nancy Pelosi. In the State Department, Blinken is on the CFR. In all the branches of government and all the cabinets that implement the president's decisions, in the military, in the banking industry, the Treasury Department, the Fed, they're everywhere. They don't absolutely control anything, but they've got their fingers in just about every decision that's made in this country, foreign and domestic. Okay, these guys are globalists, plain and simple. Globalism is the founding principle upon which the whole thing was initiated in the first place, a little over 100 years ago. And I'll just go ahead and read you this. The Council on Foreign Relations has been a key proponent of global governments, advocating for increased international cooperation and the development of global institutions to address common challenges. The CFR has argued that nation-states must be willing to cede some sovereignty to global authorities in order to address global challenges such as climate change, pandemics, and economic crises, and manufactured crises, I say. The CFR has proposed the creation of new global taxes, such as the financial transaction tax or the carbon tax, to fund global government's initiatives and address global challenges. The CFR has promoted the concept of global citizenship, arguing that individuals have a responsibility to work towards global cooperation and collective problem solving. So, in other words, this organization upholds and promotes all the nasty, rotten things that populists in this country loathe. They are the epitome of globalist corporate representation in our government. So there.
The implications are disturbing. It means the US's most powerful foreign affairs lobby is designed to eliminate the US, transforming North America into a province of the future global government. In the process, members of the CFR work behind the scenes with groups the US commonly considers enemies.
Now, what conspiracy video would be complete without the injection of the Central Intelligence Agency into the equation? Because they're in it. The Council on Foreign Relations has had a long and complex relationship with the Central Intelligence Agency, while the CFR is a private organization and the CIA is a government agency. There have been numerous connections and overlaps between the two, and here's some examples. Some CFR members have been accused of serving as CIA assets or informants, including Carl Bernstein, who was accused of being a CIA asset in the 1970s. He was one of the reporters who brought Nixon down. Also, Bob Woodward, his cohort, also had a long history in the intelligence agencies. Woodward came out of nowhere, then instantly got put on the New York Times in a huge case, huge story, and they brought Nixon down with, deep throat and all that crap. Many CFR members have held positions within the CIA, including Alan Dulles, CFR member and CIA director, and also the founder of the CIA. John Foster Dulles, he's his brother, who was a CIA director. Richard Helms was a CIA director. William Colby was a CIA director. George Bush 41 was a CIA director. And these are just a few of them. There are tons of people in the CIA that you don't know about. I knew a guy, the brother of a woman I knew, who was an agent or an officer in the CIA, and he worked as a geologist here in the United States. And if you hadn't known it, you'd have just thought he was a geologist. These guys, CIA is everywhere. Anyway, the CIA has provided funding to the CFR for various projects and research initiatives, including the CFR's Study of the American Economy project in the 50s, which was funded by the CIA, and the CFR's Project for the New American Century in the 1990s, which received funding from the CIA. Now, the Project for a New American Century was essentially what tipped off or started the ball rolling with the damn neocons who are causing so much trouble on both sides of the aisle. So anyway, the CIA is involved with this. Make no mistake. Bet your boots. Now let's take a look at some people who are actual members. And some of these people are dead, but most of them aren't. And you'll know all the names, I'm sure. If you're aware of anything going on in the world, you're going to know these names. But anyway, here we go. Dianne Feinstein, Democrat. Lindsey Graham, Republican. Chuck Schumer, Democrat. John McCain, Republican. And Mitch McConnell, Republican. And those were senators. Now, congressmen. Nancy Pelosi, Democrat. Kevin McCarthy, Republican. Adam Schiff, a Democrat, and Adam Kinzinger, a Republican. So they're on both sides of the aisles, and they're all globalists. And then some former members, so-called former members. There's Bill and Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, Joe Biden, Dick Cheney, and Condoleezza Rice. All Democrats and Republicans, both. And if you follow politics at all, you're going to notice a certain pattern with all these people, a certain commonalities that they all share. And it's not too hard. I don't have to explain it if you have half a brain in your head. Now let's look on the other side of the coin and see who isn't on the CFR. And this list was shorter. So I'll just read it anyway. Donald Trump is not on the CFR, although he was surrounded by them. Rand Paul, he's not on the CFR. And this is refreshing. Tulsi Gabbard, I didn't trust this woman, but now I'm more inclined maybe to support her for vice president. Anyway, she is not on the CFR, and Matt Gaetz is not on the CFR. Everybody talked about how Donald Trump's administration was less effective because of the the slippery, slimy people who were surrounding him. Well, now you know why. And I'll digress here a second by stating that those names are by no means the totality of their membership. There are thousands of these people who belong, so I just thought I'd throw that little zinger in there. But then, see, you've got all this shadyiosity, darkness that surrounds the CFR, which in and of itself suggests some type of moral turpitude. But anyway, let's look at what I'm talking about here. They have secretive funding. The CFR does not disclose the exact amount of funding it receives. The donors are anonymous, so you don't know who's supporting it. It could be some foreign government or, the usual suspects, Rockefeller, Carnegie, what have you. The members are secret, so you don't know who belongs. There are a few people that you can pick out and determine that they belong to it by things they say, and sometimes they'll even say that they are, but you don't know who's the members. They have closed door meetings. You don't know what's said at the meetings. All their members have to sign non-disclosure agreements so that they can't talk about it. And then they have limited access to their documents. Those are all hush-hush. So as you can see, where there's smoke, there's fire. And these guys are definitely, they're just smoking away. If these guys were potheads, they'd be Cheech and Chong. They're smoking so much. Now, doesn't that sound a little like a secret society to you? And anyway, speaking of secret societies, let's take a look at some of the history of this. That picture there, that's Cecil Rhodes. Look at them old bug eyes sticking out and, all just buggy. But he's the one who started the whole ball rolling back in the late 1800s, the late 19th century. He got rich in gold and diamonds in South Africa, and he became just about the richest man in the world. And he came up with this idea to basically start a secret society that would seek to unify all English-speaking countries and seek to dominate the world thereby. He called them roundtable groups. Well, the roundtable groups were founded by Rhodes in the late 19th century with the goal of promoting British interests and creating a unified Anglo-Saxon world. Roundtable groups supposedly formed the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States and the Royal Institute of International Affairs in the United Kingdom. Now, they couldn't get away with calling it the Royal Institute here in the United States. That's why they chose Council on Foreign Relations. But the Roundtable Group started the CFR. It is not a roundtable group. Roundtable Group is a think tank that the CFR is a think tank that the Roundtable Group created. The groups used a range of methods to achieve its goals, including establishing think tanks and research institutions to shape public opinion and policy. They influenced media outlets to promote British interests and values. In other words, propaganda, psyop. They built relationships with politicians and policymakers to shape government policy. And there's where you got the CFR. And providing financial support to like-minded individuals and organizations. Have you ever heard of the Rhodes Scholars who go to Oxford and study? Well, that's a scholarship that he started. And the people who go are the people he wants to break in to be, one of his boys. Or, of course, he's dead now, but who uphold his values and principles. That's why the Rhodes Scholarship was created. So if you ever hear about anybody being a Rhodes Scholar, let your red flags go up when you hear that. But anyway, let's proceed.
Since the Napoleonic War, no government has been able to trace the amount of influence these families wield. No one knows how much money these families control or how many industries. Ultimately, most conspiracy theorists believe members of these families cooperated with the colonial magnate Cecil Rhodes in his imperialistic quest to expand the British Empire across the entire world. This is the same Cecil Rhodes who founded the Rhodes Scholarships, a prestigious award for well-connected students with an interest in improving the world. According to one popular tale, Rhodes left 7 secret wills to be read after his death. These wills laid the blueprint for a global secret society based on the practices of the Jesuits and the Freemasons. This group became known by several names. One of the most prominent is the Round Table Group. The CFR is allegedly the U.S. front for this organization.
Now, the reason we know so much about the history of this organization is because there was an historian who wrote about it. A guy's named Carroll Quigley. Carroll sounds like kind of a sissy name, but no, that back then it was a man's name too. And he made buddy buds with these guys, and they kind of let him into their little secret society, and then he wrote a history of it. He wrote two of them, Tragedy and Hope and Anglo-American Establishment. Those books were never intended for anyone to really read. He wrote them for other academics and intellectuals, and, he never expected that anybody would ever really read them. He figured they'd be stuck off in some university library somewhere for some PhD student to look at. Well, ta-da, the internet came along, and the word got out, and suddenly these books were selling like hotcakes all over the place, and everybody knew about it. Anyone who knows anything about globalism and their goals learned it by reading Tragedy and Hope. That's just the long and the short of it. He even tried to get it out of print. He tried to get the publisher to stop publishing it. And then, somebody started bootlegging it and printing it from another publisher, and so they went back to printing it again. And you can get it. It's on Amazon. You can get it in libraries. It's a very dry read. I've read snippets of it. I don't have the attention span to read through that. But there's a fellow named G. Edward Griffin who's all over the internet, YouTube and what have you, and he has something to say about it. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Certainly others, like Cecil Rhodes, picked it up. They picked up the concept. I don't know if there's a historical continuity back to Adam Weishaupt. I don't think it makes an awful lot of difference when we realize that there are people like Cecil Rhodes who read Adam Weishaupt's work and said, hey, this is a good idea. Let's use it. And that's basically what Cecil Rhodes did. He adopted the strategy that Weishaupt created of, he called it rings within rings within rings. That means that the center of the secret society would be run by one individual with perhaps a little brain trust around him of 2 or 3 people. They would be the absolute rulers of this whole structure. Then they would create around them a ring, as they called it, a larger organization, which they would dominate. They would control it absolutely from the center. But the other members who were recruited into this larger organization would not be allowed to know that there was an inner control and direction. They were brought in for a lesser view of the whole purpose. And that was the outer ring, and that might be 20, 30, 50 people, maybe 100 people. And then outside of that, there would be a larger ring, another organization created with hundreds of people, perhaps thousands of people. And they would not be allowed to know, or would they even suspect, that there was an inner ring controlling the larger outer ring. And this is what Weishaupt called rings within rings within rings. Cecil Rhodes thought that was a dandy idea, and so he adopted it as the structure for his secret society. Now, in his group, the inner circle, they called the Society of the Elect. That was the name Rhodes put to it. It originally consisted of Cecil Rhodes and a brain trust from British banking and politics. A very small number of highly placed, very wealthy people. The center of gravity, as I mentioned a moment ago, shifted eventually to the Rockefeller Group in the United States, with centers of influence in such other organizations as the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, and that sort of thing. We've all heard about these. And the goal shifted away from the control from the British Empire to a international control through something called the New World Order, is the phrase they adopted, with control primarily focused in New York, with the United Nations meant to be the hub of this global government. And I should say global government, not just any global government, but one based on the model of collectivism, which means total control over every human being. Not much room left there for personal freedom. Now, the secondary rings around the society of the elect were called roundtables. And they were formed in the United States, in Britain, and all of the former British dependencies. And they still exist today. They operate under that name. Around the roundtables, a larger ring, a tertiary ring, was formed, and they called them front groups in a generic sense, in each country where there were roundtables. And they took on the name, in the dependencies of the former dependencies of the British Empire, they took on the name of Royal Institute for International Affairs. That's where you'll find them today, under that name, in all of the countries, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and so forth. The Royal Institute of International Affairs. But in the United States, the word royal didn't go over too well, and so they changed it completely, and they called it the Council on Foreign Relations.
Oh, thank you very much, Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters. I have been often to, I guess, the mothership in New York City, but it's good to have an outpost of the Council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the Council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.